Hi, and welcome to this week's DBT skill. Today, we are going to start with our opening mindfulness. So, what you will need is something to write with, so a pen or a pencil, whatever you have on hand, as well as a scrap piece of paper. If that's not accessible to you, you can also use your phone. So, if you want to pull out like your notes app, just something to jot some ideas down. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to pull up a whiteboard here. We're going to do a little activity, kind of like a brain dump for our mindfulness to get us thinking about different activities that we can do. And this relates to the skill that we learned in our last video. Okay, so in a moment here, you should see my whiteboard. And you're going to see in a moment here that there's different categories. So there's four different categories. I call this activity the top five. And what we're going to do is essentially just brainstorm different activities that you can do based on that category. So the first one is top five activities to do outside. So think about like your favorite activities that you like to do outside, things that you want to do more outside. Depending on what time of the year you're watching this video, it might want to think about the seasons and what's available to you. Because what you're going to do outside in the winter might look really different than what you're going to do in the summer. Top five things to do with friends. Top five activities to do on a rainy day. So maybe kind of when you're indoors, inside. And then top five activities to do by yourself. So again, the purpose of this mindfulness is just to really be present, think about some activities that you might enjoy or that you might want to try. And then we will come back and reflect on that. So go ahead and pause this video and begin writing some of the things down. Okay. So now that you're back, I figured I would share some ideas that I came up with in the meantime. So after spending some time, I wrote the following things down. So again, this is just some things that came to my mind, and I'm curious what looks different from the list that you created. So I put top five activities to do outside, go for a walk or a hike, so maybe checking out a new hiking trail. Bike riding is something that I know I really enjoy doing when it's nice out. Checking out a new park, and whether it's bringing a snack or having a picnic or just spending time walking around the park, have a barbecue or go swimming. Again, weather dependent, it being nice, or taking my book outside to read. So sitting on my porch or another area that might be really nice to just enjoy a book outside. Activities to do with friends. Try a group fitness class together. So maybe you and a buddy go and check out a spin class or yoga Pilates class. Maybe a group of friends, you have a cook-off or bake-off competition together. Make a fun TikTok. Have a game night. Play video games. Those are just some of the ones I came up with. Activities to do on a rainy day. Watching your favorite movie. Reading a book, try a new recipe. So maybe I know on a rainy day I love making something cozy, whether it's a soup or a chili. Journaling is always another great activity to do on a rainy day. And I also put rearranging a room. I know this maybe doesn't sound fun for some folks, but for me, it's really fun. I love being able to organize a space, and I always feel really good afterwards. And then last, top five activities to do by yourself. Play the New York Times daily word puzzles. So maybe it's Wordle or Connections, whatever. They have a bunch of different word games. Giving yourself a mani or pedis, maybe painting your nails, doing your makeup, if that is your vibe. Maybe doing a solo exercise, some stretching, or just doing something that feels good and active. Taking yourself on a coffee date. So maybe going to your local coffee shop and getting a special treat. And then I put listening to a podcast of interest for you. All right, so those are some of the things that I came up with that I enjoy doing with, depending on the category. Curious what you came up with, what it was like to think about these things. Curious if there's things on here that you're like, oh, I was thinking about this and I really want to try and do it. Um, because sometimes we fall out of doing things that we like, and it can be nice to get back into doing those activities. And or maybe it feels really good to just try something totally new. All right. Well, thanks for engaging in this exercise together. All right. I'm going to close this out. So we're going to do a recap of our skill from last week. Last week, in our last video, we talked about the accumulate the positive skill, which is one of the skills in the ABC please skill. And from our last video, if you remember, the ABC please skill is all about really helping us reduce our vulnerabilities to feeling intense emotions. So I'm going to just share my screen here for our workbook, just pulling it up to kind of give us a brief overview. Accumulate the positives is all about engaging in pleasant activities. The idea behind this is to improve our mood, help us feel more of those like pleasant, comfortable, exciting emotions, and reducing the ones that maybe feel uncomfortable. Okay. So accumulating the positives is all about proactively engaging in preferred leisure activities that, again, elicit more of those pleasant emotions. The more that folks can engage in pleasant experiences, it reduces suffering and overall pain. It is important to practice being mindful while engaging in these activities to stay connected in the moment to help notice the benefits as they are happening. Okay, so how did it go this week? I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I want you to reflect on how it went this week with practicing this skill. What activities did you try? And how did it go? Was there any barriers that came up for you? How mindful were you able to be while you were engaged in that activity? I know for me this week, I did schedule a yoga class and it was really helpful. I was able to shut off my phone during the 1 hour class and be really present. And it just felt really nice to do something active as well as like restorative. It was a yoga class that involved a lot of movement in the beginning and then was very like restorative, relaxing at the end. So it was nice to have like an activity that um, kind of got my heart rate up, but then also helped me to relax a little bit. So curious what you tried and how it went. If there are any barriers or things that did get in the way, I want to encourage and empower you to talk through that with your individual therapist or next time that you check in with your group to see how you can kind of work through some of those challenges or barriers that might have gotten in the way. Okay. So we are going to move on today and talk about the B and the C in the ABC please skill. So I'm just going to scroll and keep moving along. Okay. So we're going to first talk about the B. The B in the ABC skill stands for building mastery. This is all about building ways to feel more accomplished by checking off to-do lists, trying something new, and mastering a new skill. So, what we need to know here, building mastery is feeling productive, accomplished, and experiencing a sense of pride when completing tasks. People can build mastery by completing tasks off their to-do lists and or finding at least one thing to do that gives them a sense of accomplishment. People can also build mastery by honing in on their passion and building their skills in a certain area, such as learning how to play an instrument, learning and practicing a new language, etc. When building mastery, it is important to choose something that feels challenging but not impossible. It is helpful to try and gradually increase the difficulty over time to avoid feeling bored in the task or activity. But with this, we want to really set ourselves up for success. So that's why it's important to not um, do something that feels like impossible, because then it can just feel overwhelmed and then it doesn't really set us up for success. Um, it might set us up for feeling like we can't do it, right? Like if I haven't been very active recently and maybe I haven't, maybe I want to sign up for like a half marathon, but I haven't been able to run a 5K. I would want to start small, right? Because if I just were to sign up for a half marathon in a month, that might feel unrealistic if I haven't been properly training. And also probably set me up for like injury or, um, yeah, like just not setting myself up for a successful situation. So we would want to be able to break things down smaller, set us up for smaller successes to work up to our larger goal. If the overall goal is to run a half marathon, maybe I book one 6 months out from here. So I give myself time to build up to that goal. That's just an example there. Um, so yeah, I really love this skill because I think there's a couple components to it. It's about, you know, really trying to master a skill, building a sense of fulfillment in a certain area or a skill set. And it's also can be really simple as just doing something, one thing off your to-do list. If it's hard for you to get out of bed and make your bed and start your day, maybe it is just doing one small thing to help you be able to do that. So we're going to talk about how to practice. Okay. Try something new. Pick up something new to try, watch a YouTube video or a how-to tutorial. So, one way to practice this is, like this says, trying something new, something that might feel challenging. Um, whether it's a hobby or something that we need to put together, there's a lot of different things that we can do when it comes to trying something new. Look for a challenge. Find something that gives you a challenge, whether it's physical, emotional, or cognitive, right? Because sometimes when something just feels so easy, it doesn't even feel like we did anything. So being able to have a little bit of challenge so we don't get bored, and so that it feels like, yeah, we accomplished that. Another way to practice is creating a to-do list. Identify a few things you need to accomplish, and then work on completing each task to check off your list. So this is a really great way for us to stay organized, for us to break things down into smaller tasks. And even, just being able to check something off can feel really good and a way for us to build mastery. All right, so let's talk about some examples and a story time. Feeling confident and capable can help you navigate challenges more effectively. In this week, you'll learn to develop activities that help you feel more in control and practice managing emotions before they arise. Let's say you have a big presentation coming up that makes you feel anxious. Instead of simply worrying about it, you can cope ahead by practicing the presentation in front of a mirror or seeking guidance from a teacher or a mentor. By building mastery and preparing in advance, you can reduce anxiety and perform better, right? So being able to take a proactive approach by doing something to help prepare, by, getting support, reaching out, practicing, rehearsing things. That is definitely a way for us to build up mastery, to feeling more confident and being able to um, do X activity or in this situation, being able to reduce that anxiety and be able to move forward with the presentation. Excuse me. We'll move on to story time here. One way to build mastery is by checking things off your to-do list. Maggie, who uses she, her pronouns, didn't really believe that doing small chores would help her feel better or give her a sense of accomplishment. She figured, so what? It isn't that big of a deal to make my bed or fold my laundry. Her boyfriend pointed out that she was constantly disqualifying the positive things she was doing and encouraged her to see things differently. Maggie then decided to keep track of creating a to-do list and notice a subtle shift in her mood. She went to bed each night with crossing things off her to-do list, which increased her sense of self and self-worth over time. Right? So sometimes just doing those little things can really add up. And if we're disqualifying them, we're not really seeing them for what they are. Um, because sometimes those little things can be easy to just not do either. So the fact that we are doing it can really build up that sense of like, wow, wait, I actually did a lot of different things today, even if they were small tasks. Okay. So for a home practice this week, I want you to think about how you can try and practice building mastery. So again, there's lots of different ways, whether it's, you maybe really have a goal set for um, improving in something that you're already working at, right? Maybe you have a certain athletic goal. Maybe you have some sort of academic goal. If you already have that goal in motion, great. Maybe you work on trying to build that by doing one additional thing to give yourself some challenge to help you achieve that goal. Or maybe you work on creating to-do lists by, again, things that you have to accomplish this week and then start checking them off as you do them. Or maybe there's something that you really have been wanting to do that is totally different, not something that, you've been working on, but maybe it's just a totally new skill in general. And maybe you set a small goal to work on that. So here are some examples of how to do this. So by yourself, you can identify an activity or skill you would like to improve or learn. Break it down into small steps and create a plan to practice or engage in that activity regularly. Celebrate your progress along the way. Being your own cheerleader. You can do this with a peer by sharing with your friend a skill or activity you both want to develop. Discuss the steps needed to achieve mastery and encourage each other to set goals and practice regularly. Offer support and accountability. You can do this with a parent by discussing with your parent a skill or activity you want to develop. Seek their guidance on breaking it down into manageable steps. Share your plan and ask for their support and encouragement as you work towards mastery. Okay. And then you're essentially just recording how it goes. So share how you practice this with either yourself, a peer, or a caregiver this week. Was it effective? What did you notice? What was different when practicing building mastery? And then how did you feel before and after practice building mastery? Write down before and after and the intensity. All right. So there is one more skill we're going to be covering in our video today, and that is the C, and that is coping ahead. So we're going to move forward with coping ahead. So this is the last one in the ABC skill. With coping ahead, we want to think and plan ahead to have a proactive approach to crisis situations as opposed to a reactive approach. So again, this kind of goes back to the goal of the ABC skills is to have a more proactive approach, to think ahead, to plan ahead, to be able to set us up for success, reduce those vulnerabilities of the likelihood of experiencing intense emotions, right? If we can effectively cope ahead, we might not feel the intensity of an emotion since we've planned ahead, since we kind of have a concrete plan in place of how to conquer and work through that emotion. Okay, so what to know? Coping ahead is being proactive and planning ahead for difficult situations. Follow these steps to create a cope ahead plan to feel more prepared for when challenging situations arise. So, disclaimer here is that we're not going to always know when a difficult situation arises. We can't predict the future. Life happens, right? If I'm out and about and I get a flat tire, I didn't know that was going to happen, right? That caught me off guard. It caught me off surprise. However, we can still have a plan in place for when unexpected stressors come up. We can also have a plan for when we do expect and anticipate stressors. So, for instance, if you are planning ahead and thinking about going to college soon, whether it's a few months away or a year away, there are things you can do to cope ahead to plan for that big transition since you know it's on the horizon, right? So, there is a difference there. I wanted to just share that, like, sometimes unexpected things pop up. And then there are expected things that we can plan ahead. And so being able to have cope ahead plans of, okay, what to do when those unexpected things happen or the unexpected triggers happen, and what can we do and really effectively plan for when we know stressors are on the horizon. Okay. So how to practice. Describe the situation that is likely to prompt a problem behavior. Be specific, label the emotion, and action urge that is likely to occur. So, for instance, this is naming the situation, right? So, again, if we're using the college example, we might say something specific like, I feel anxious of the idea of moving out of state or far away when I go to college in a few months. And I might have the urge to withdraw, avoid, like we want to name what we might anticipate our experience to be. If I'm using a situation that might be unexpected, if we're going to go again with that example of getting a flat tire when you're driving, I might expect that my emotions might go 0 to 100 really quick. I might feel very panicked or distressed. And I might have the urge to lash out, have the urge to cry. We want to like really name and be specific of what might happen if we're in those situations. Then we want to choose what skills you want to implement during that situation. So this is where we get to be really specific and detailed with the plan. And again, the plans that I might think about might look different depending again if it's an anticipated thing. So if I'm going away to school and college, here are the specific skills I can do to prep ahead. And that might be things like if we're having the urge to avoid and withdraw, we might have a cope ahead plan of actually doing things to prepare for that transition. So maybe it is things like making, 1 week making purchases for your dorm. Maybe another week is FaceTiming with your future roommate. Maybe another week is going to walk around the campus if you're able to do that, just to get another sense of where buildings are, to feel more prepared. Maybe we set up an email or we set up an appointment with our advisor. Um, Maybe we attend orientation for our school. So there are things that we can really do that like might be a little bit more proactive of like, okay, here are all the things I'm going to do to not avoid or withdraw. I'm going to actually do the opposite here, and it's practicing opposite action, right? Throwing yourself into those situations. A little bit of that exposure of like I'm going to go to campus and get myself feeling a little bit more acquainted and really coming up with a detailed plan of like who, what, where, when, how I'm going to execute this. This is where you can get to like really specific details of like breaking it down week to week, day by day, however that might look for you. With the other type of plan that I was talking about in terms of like those unexpected things, maybe that's where we really want to focus on like distress tolerance skills, right? Because we might not know when a crisis situation might occur or, a stressful situation occur. And that might be, rehearsing and talking through different crisis survival skills. Okay. Another way to practice is by imagining the situation in your mind as vividly as possible. So, being able to put yourself in that situation, envision it, and being able to think about like, okay, what are my needs? What happens when when I'm in that situation, being really clear and mindful about that. So think about the scenario happening in real time to best practice the cope ahead plan. Then we want to rehearse coping ahead in the situation. So practice, right? Practicing this, rehearsing this. Maybe you do this with your therapist in your one-on-one session by practicing your cope ahead plan over and over again. Pretending that you're in that situation, rehearsing it out, exactly how you would start coping ahead, what you would say and do that will be effective in the moment. You might even think about like what other supports you might have in place. Are you tagging in a friend that's really helpful or a caregiver, a parent to kind of help coach you through? Rehearse coping effectively with the worst case scenario to better prepare for a more challenging situation. Okay, let's talk through some examples and a story. So, Richie, who uses he, him pronouns, was working on creating a cope ahead plan for an upcoming party he was nervous about attending. Here are the steps he took in creating a cope ahead plan. What would you add or do differently if you were in Richie's shoes? So, the first thing that he used was imagery to envision coping well at the party and imagine interacting positively with peers while he was there. Okay, so Richie was able to envision the party, envision himself like having positive interactions, communicating with those people, and was able to kind of picture that. Then practice managing emotions before they arise by anticipating challenges at the party. So here, Richie was able to think about like what could go wrong at the party. Here are the challenges that might happen. How can I practice managing the emotions that come with those challenges? Then engage fully in life experiences and actively participate in conversations when present with his peers. Practice being in the moment and not preparing what he will say next. So, again, this might be like doing a little bit of role play with your therapist. It sounds like in this case, Richie was able to practice just being in the moment, having those conversations um, go really naturally without having to prepare what to say. All right, so then I want you to reflect on what you would add or do differently if you were in Richie's shoes. All right, and let's do a story here. Everyone handles things differently. The key is how you can prepare for difficult times. What if you prepared for emotional distress the same way you would prepare to have an evacuation plan or a school fire drill? Buildings have plans to escape in the events of an emergency to be proactive. Evie, who uses she, her pronouns, is a planner. She often worries about many things in her life and feels she is prepared for situations based on rehearsing worst case scenarios with her mom. She is caught off guard when her therapist asked her what plan she has in place for an emotional crisis, not just like a physical crisis. Evie had never thought about that before and realized she only has plans for actual physical emergencies, such as like her car breaking down or a fire drill, things like that. It was at this moment she realized it could also be beneficial to have a plan for what to do when her distress is at an all-time high. She worked with her therapist in identifying 3 distress tolerance skills, a contact list of supports, and created a self-soothe kit to implement as her cope ahead plan. Okay, so question for all of you. Do you have any plans put into place when things are really hard? If so, maybe reflect on them, jot them down, write them in your notes app, because it is really helpful to have something solid in place for when things do go arise, which happens. Life happens, right? Things happen that are stressful. And so it is really helpful to have some cope ahead plans in place. All right, home practice this week. So, with yourself, you can write down 3 skills you can use when a crisis situation occurs. Think about any barriers that can get in the way and troubleshoot them. So, here again, maybe thinking about just your distress tolerance skills. Reviewing that module might be really helpful. You can do this with a friend by identifying support people you would include in your plan. Are your friends a part of your plan? If so, let them know and have a conversation with them about how they could help you in moments of high distress. And then maybe you do it with a parent or a caregiver. Share your plan with your caregiver. Let them be aware how they can also take a role in supporting you. Be clear on what you want and need in those moments, right? Giving them that really direct feedback of like, when I feel this way, it's really helpful when you say X or when you do X, Y, or Z, or if you could check on me during this time. Being really, really mindful of what it is that you think you need or want in those moments and having that conversation with your parents. Okay. And then you're just recording how it goes. Practice how it went with practicing with either yourself, a peer, or a parent. Was it effective? What did you notice? Any observations that came up? And then how you felt before and after practicing this skill. So pretty straightforward. This week, there are 2 skills then you're going to be really thinking about and practicing, which is building mastery and coping ahead. So give those 2 a try. And if there's any further questions you have, of course, revisit them in your group setting or with your therapist. All right. Well, thanks for watching.